Hey y'all, welcome back. It's Sim here, back with another episode, Monday Motions. And here I have a very special guest. I'm happy to announce that I am with NBA skills trainer, entrepreneur, author, he does it all, Mr. Drew Hanlen. Drew, thank you very much for joining me.
Of course, I'm glad we got the time to do this again.
Yeah, it's been a while since my freshman year of college. So so this is a kind of a full circle moment for me, and it's really cool. So thank you again. So first, I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about, just so that my audience knows a little bit about your background and kind of where you started and how you were able to, grow in the skills coaching world.
Yeah, I mean, I started really young. I was 17 years old and started working out local players around St. Louis area. And one of those local players was a 13-year-old Brad Beal. And as Brad, expanded his game and became the player that he is now, a lot of other people were like, wow. We've been really impressed with Brad's development, and that kind of started everything for me. And so, then I continued to train a lot of top high school players, top college players. And my sophomore year in college, I started working out David Lee, helped him become an NBA All-Star, and the rest was history. It was just word of mouth is everything in the industry that I'm in. And so I was fortunate to get an opportunity to work with players, helped a lot of guys grow their games, and now I'm fortunate to work with about a dozen NBA players full time and do their off-season workouts, their in-season film breakdowns, and make adjustments with them. But I'm year round with about a dozen guys now, and it's been a great experience.
Wow. Yeah, that's really incredible. And I've been lucky enough to watch you from an early stage. I used to watch the old Pure Sweat YouTube videos back in the day, and now growing to what it is now, and it's really incredible to see. One thing that I will ask you though is, like, I know you've been branching out into other areas. Like you have your book, which I'll let you talk a little bit about, which I love the title, by the way, Stop Bullshitting Yourself. It's kind of straight to the point. I love that. I was going to ask you, how do you manage, you're able to branch out now, like you're an author now, you're a keynote speaker I saw at a couple of other events. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about how you manage, being a skills coach versus those other things that you dipped into now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reason that I've been able to branch out is just because I've learned so much from working with some of the highest performing athletes and entrepreneurs in the world, and so I just want to share kind of the secrets to their success with everybody else. And so it all starts with the skills component. I've been able to help guys improve their games and take their games to the next level. But a lot of that work comes off the court. A lot of it comes with mentality. A lot of it, the way they work. A lot of it comes with the detailed approach we take. And I realized that there was a formula, a system that I use with all of them. And so I've wanted to share it with others. The same system that I use to help a guy like Jason Tatum, when he was 13 years old, turn into the player he is now, is the same system that helped my dad lose 90 pounds in a calendar year. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to start sharing all the strategies and all the principles and all the methods that I use with these, top basketball players, and, put them into practice with everybody else. And so that's what my book's all about. I really do believe that people are capable of a lot more than they think they're capable of. And I think the secret to that is, to stop bullshitting themselves. I think the secret is basically to stop doing the dumb things that hurt them and hold them back and cause them to plateau. And I think it's time for them to make meaningful change by taking actionable steps to get there. And so that's what the book lays out, the system that I use, and it can be used for anything. And that's what I talk about when I'm on stage, doing keynote speeches as well, as I just lay out the system, the strategies, and the principles that I think that can help anybody achieve almost anything.
Yeah. And that's important that it really applies to just about anybody. A lot of the things that you learn through the game of basketball apply elsewhere, which is what I've come to learn as well. Like I don't know if you remember from the last time we were speaking, but I was a skill development coach myself for about 6 or 7 years. I went outside of that game for my own reasons and started the podcast, but a lot of the stuff that I learned while I was in there, teamwork and, things of that nature, and being able to communicate effectively. Those are all things that I learned from that I'm able to carry over into a new world and a whole new business plan. So like, that's really important. And I'm glad that you said that this book really applies to just about anybody. So I really wanted to, get your perspective on kind of like your early stages. You mentioned before that you had Bradley Beal as somebody that you trained at a very young age. Do you think that him and maybe some of the other athletes alone had a reason, had a big reason as to why you grew, or was there, or what were some of the other actionable steps that you took at that age to kind of to grow yourself and build up a successful brand by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there were a ton of things. Like, I think that Brad's success was a huge reason why I was able to make a name for myself in the industry. I always give Brad a ton of credit for that. But there was also a lot of other things. You know, when I was a junior in high school, I wrote a drill book. I published it at Kinko's, FedEx, and self-bound the copies. I drove around all the Midwest, went to tournaments, camps, clinics, sold 5,000 drill books that summer out of the back of my trunk and out of my backpack. I was driving all over the Midwest doing camps and clinics. Sometimes I'd make $200 in a gym. Sometimes I'd make $1,200 in a gym. It didn't matter. I was willing to do anything to get my name out there. You know, in the book, I even tell a story about there were a couple of nights where I end up sleeping in my car just because, you know, if you make $300 in a clinic, you don't want to spend half of it at a Holiday Inn. And so, you know, you end up just pulling in the Holiday Inn parking lot, turning up the heat, letting it get hot enough so that you're not cold in the middle of the night, and then turn off the car to save gas, and you know, recline back. And sure enough, there was one night where I heard a knock on the window, and it was security saying you can't park here. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm checking in tomorrow morning. It's like, well, you can't be here. And I wasn't checking in the next morning. I just was trying to say that so I didn't get in trouble, and then drive and find a new parking lot and do the same thing. So, you know, I think that, I mean, there's a ton of things that I did, you know, to be successful. I think that, like anything, you have to sacrifice a ton of energy, time, effort. But really, I never took no for an answer. You know, that was the biggest thing, was I always found a way. And so if I tried something that wasn't working, I pivoted. If I tried something that was working, I kept doing it and tried to, you know, make it even more efficient and more effective. And that's been the story of my whole career.
And that's really incredible to hear the kind of backstory of like the struggle. That's what a lot of people don't like to talk about, and to hear some of the same things, like some of the same things that I went through myself. Like I was in a similar situation doing Nike camps at the beginning of my coaching career, you know, just trying to build a name for myself, working with kids. Same thing, like sleeping in my car when I had to, and like going to as many locations as I could that were a reasonable distance, and then just trying to find places to sleep at. Like it's a grind, but you know, I commend you for going through that, because I've been there myself, and it's not definitely not easy. So so thank you for talking about that too.
Of course, I think that's what people got to realize is it doesn't matter what you're after. There's going to be a lot of things that you don't want to do to get there that you have to do that are mandatory to get there. You know, it's the saying that everyone uses now is like, choose your suck. You know what I mean? Like, do you want your life to suck, or do you want to do a bunch of things that suck that end up getting you the life that you actually want? And so, you know, I always am a big believer in like doing the hard work so that eventually you get to live the easy life, or the life that you want to live.
Yeah, totally agree. So kind of switching gears here, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about something that I mentioned to you kind of briefly before, that I like to talk about something motivational, maybe something, it's a book passage, maybe from your own book, something that somebody might have told you throughout your career that you kind of live by, and just something from a mentality standpoint that you can leave my audience with.
I'm going to give you something my grandma told me. It's my favorite quote, and it's something that she told me when I first started to have some success. And she said, Drew, just remember that you're never going to have everything that you want, but you're always going to have more than you need. And the reason why I love that quote so much is because it puts everything in perspective. Because in the self-help world, everyone always is talking about more, more, more. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the Mexican fisherman, but it's a great, you know, way to kind of frame this quote. But the story is basically there's a businessman, and he's walking out to his yacht on a dock, and he sees this fisherman that comes back in his little boat, and he, you know, docks it up, and he walks off the boat, and he has a ton of fish. And he says, man, he said, how long did it take you to catch all those fish? He said, not very long. He said, well, why aren't you still out there catching more fish? He said, well, this is enough to feed my family. And he said, man, I could really help you. And he said, why is that? And he said, what do you normally do during the day? He said, well, all I do is I come out here, I fish, I go back home, I hang out with my family, I spend time with friends on the beach, and, you know, basically have a good time. He said, oh, no, I can really help you. I've got a, you know, Harvard business degree. And he said, well, how could you help me? He said, well, he said, listen, he said, if you keep going out there and fishing and catch more than just for your family, we can eventually take those to the local market and we can sell them. And he said, well, then what? He said, well, then if you make enough money, you can buy a bigger boat. He said, well, then what? He said, then you can hire other people to help you catch even more fish. He said, and then what? He said, then we can go to a bigger city and you can, start this whole entrepreneurship kind of venture that will allow you to make a ton of money. He said, and then what? He said, well, then you can make enough money to sell your company. He said, and then what? He said, well, then you can retire and then you can fish for a couple hours, enough to feed your family and spend time with your friends on the beach at night. He said, well, that's what I'm already doing. And I think that kind of analogy is where so many people get stuck. So many people think that they need more in their life when really what they need to do is they need to appreciate the things that they do have in their life. I think that if we all live with that appreciation and count our blessings instead of, really focus on the stress and struggles that, are part of life, I think that'll be, the best piece of advice I could give you.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely a great perspective to have, is just appreciate what's in front of you. And I live by that as well. And in a different way, I've heard different quotes that kind of teach the same, or kind of have the same teachings. And it's definitely it's different comparatively to some of the other entrepreneurs and people that I've had on. So it's really good and kind of refreshing to hear you say that. So,
and trust me, there's a lot of times there's a lot of times where I am telling guys, there's times where somebody might have, I remember when there was a game when Joel had 59 points. And the first thing I said afterwards, you couldn't even get 60, like you couldn't, whatever. And then I remember when he had a 70-point game last year, and he FaceTimed me in the locker room and put his middle finger up and was like, yeah, how's that for a 60-point game? Like, it was 70. And so I'm always more. I always believe even the best have another level in them. But I also think you have to appreciate all the success that you're having. I also think you have to appreciate how far you've come, in life. And the truth is, we're all born with nothing. We're going to die with nothing. So, the only way that we can really live a meaningful and peaceful life is by capturing that inner peace, and that's what we should all be striving for, is how do we live a life where we wake up doing the things that we want to do and feel the things we want to feel and enjoy the things we want to enjoy and be with the people we want to be with. That's real success, because trust me, I work with a lot of really successful basketball players. I also consult with CEOs that are worth billions of dollars. And, money does not buy happiness. And I would way rather be broke and happy than, be rich and unhappy. And I think the theme of, my whole quote is like, you can try to have it both ways, but inner peace is more valuable than any amount of money. And that's what real success looks like to me.
Totally agree. Thanks for that. That's great stuff. The one thing that I would say is, like, anybody that has been there, that has seen that level of success, I feel like that's something that comes afterwards. That's a perspective that comes afterwards for a lot of those people, because, like, okay, now that I have all this money, I have all this success, it's like now what? And then they kind of change their perspective on, like, okay, the things that really matter, are, like you said, your family. The things that really matter are spending time with others and valuing what you have in front of you. So, like, that perspective kind of changes when you see it. But if you can get that perspective beforehand, before you see all the success and all that thing, I feel like that's also something that's a really valuable thing to teach. And that's kind of like a call to action that I could give to them as well. So yeah, that's really great stuff.
There's a section in my book that talks about a personal mistake that I made, and it was years ago. My grandma got diagnosed with cancer, and she went to the hospital, and I went to the hospital and I was visiting her for the first 2 days. And that third day I said, hey, Grandma, I got to go away for the weekend. I was training a pre-draft client, and so I had to fly to them and work them out. And it was in May. Remember, the draft isn't for a couple months, but I was like, I deemed it so important because at the time I was so, focused on becoming a successful trainer and establishing myself as the premier trainer in the space. And so sure enough, I leave on that third day and said, Grandma, I'll see you, after the weekend. I'll be back on Monday. And, the next day, I FaceTimed my grandma and, hey, Grandma, how you doing? She said, I'm doing great. And that was the last time I talked to my grandma. And I always tell people that my last conversation with my grandma didn't have to be on FaceTime, but it was because I made a dumb decision to choose what I deemed urgent instead of what was truly important. And I think that that's something that is so important, is that we keep the important things, at the front of our mind instead of pushing them to the back burner. Because, a lot of times, we end up stressing and struggling and losing sleep over things that really don't matter. And we end up not spending enough quality time on things that do matter. And so that would be another thing to just back everything that you just said.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know, just kind of in the interest of time, I know you said you had a few minutes and you're a busy man. I think that, that's a really good note to kind of wrap things up on. But I'd also like to ask to finish and just kind of open the floor for you for anything that you might have coming up. Any other projects you're working for or you're working on? I know that you said, like, obviously the book is the most recent thing, but is there any other keynote speaking things or anything on the Pure Sweat side of things that you've been working on that you'd like to share as well?
I mean, I'd start off by saying this. I'd start off by saying that I always admire people like yourselves that take leaps of faith and understand that it takes a long time to build anything up. And I would hope that people realize that, the journey to losing 50 pounds starts with not cheating the next meal. And I think that, the journey to financial freedom starts by making one good decision to save instead of purchase, or to, add an additional revenue stream or whatever that may be. I think that, to build a successful podcast, there's going to be times where you post a video and you get, very few views. But you keep posting and keep posting, and eventually, one hits, and now you start building an audience that supports you, and then eventually over time you have a successful podcast. So I think that consistency trumps intensity. It's a message that I talk about a lot in my book, but I think that's the message that when you said, is anything coming up, I would rather give to your audience, and that's a valuable lesson. Is like stack days, stack moments, build momentum. And over time, I think you're gonna look back and be like, wow, I'm so glad I started back then. And then, yeah, I mean, trust me, stop bullshitting yourself. The reason I wrote this book was because, I wanted to give the exact same system and strategy that I use with my clients and with all these successful entrepreneurs and business people to the world. We talk a lot about what, defining what really matters in your life, and then how to get there. That's the big premise of the book. It's where you are, doing an audit of where you are, then kind of discovering where you want to get to, and then putting a blueprint together to get there. And I gave you the actionable steps to actually make that happen. And then an actual blueprint, like there's places where you can fill in your own stuff, because I think too many times when you're reading books, it's all about the author. And I wanted this to be all about the reader. And so I spent a lot of time making sure that everything was, going back to how to impact the reader's life. And so I'm really excited for people to get their hands on it in February when it's released. And, I'm excited, I'm actually releasing a course coming up this weekend that goes hand in hand. For everybody that's bought the book, they get the course. And I'm super excited for them to get their hands on the course, because I think that most people fail their New Year's resolutions. And I think that it'll help some people stay on their grind instead of giving up when the tough times, start happening.
Right. Totally agree. And I know I'm definitely going to go and check out a copy of the book myself. So thank you. Thanks for everything. It's a lot of really great, a lot of really great insight, and I'm, happy to have had you on. You're definitely one of a kind in your field, and, there's a lot of respect, coming from me. So yeah, thank you again. And I value everything that you put out, and you've done a really great job this far, and I'm happy to see what you have coming up too.
No, I appreciate that, and keep rolling, man. Like I said, it is awesome to see people that start with the snowball and they're pushing it down, and I'm like, eventually that snowball is going to be big enough to build a big Frosty that you're proud of, you know what I mean? And so, keep chipping away, keep putting out inspiring messages to everybody, and you never know how you can impact a life. The story of the starfish, there might be, 10,000 starfish dried up on the beach, and you throw one in and your friend says, yo, what are you doing? You're not going to be able to, help, throw all these 10,000 starfish back in the ocean. And he says, well, did it matter to that one starfish? Of course it did. And so for you, it doesn't matter if you have, millions of viewers or a couple hundred or a couple thousand, anybody that is watching your podcast, listening to your podcast or watching your show is gonna get some messages that can help their life out. So keep rolling, man, and just know I'm always in your corner.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I'm definitely gonna get this episode out. I have another one coming just before yours with my cousin who has a brand, the Fit Traveler. I'm a partner with. I'm wearing it right now, but I have hers coming out first. Yours coming after that, and that's exactly what the goal is just to keep spreading positive messages, keep helping people be productive, and yeah, like you said, take it one day at a time, and I'm going to continue to put out those positive messages. So, I really thank you for the reassurance, especially coming from you, somebody that's made it and done all these great things. It's really, that means a lot to me. So thank you.
Awesome, no problem. Awesome. Well, yeah, I look forward to keep in touch with you, and like I said, anybody out there, take as much as you can from him, myself, and just understand that inner peace is the main goal that we should all be after.
Right. Amen to that. I'll talk to you soon. I'll make sure that this all this stuff gets out, and I'll stay in touch. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, my man.
All right. Have a good one.